You should just sign it over, Dad. Melissa deserves the house more than you do. That's what my son, David, said to me one chilly Saturday morning, as we sat in the kitchen of the home I'd built with my own two hands back in 1987. His wife, Melissa, stood beside him with her arms crossed, wearing that smirk she always saved for me, half pity, half victory. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. "Excuse me?" David leaned forward, speaking slower like I was too old to understand plain English. "Melissa and I have been talking. You don't need this place anymore. It's too big for you, and the upkeep is eating into your pension. Melissa's been managing the bills already, so it just makes sense for you to transfer the deed to us. It's the fair thing to do," Melissa chimed in, her voice dripping with sweetness that barely hid the venom underneath. "Don't you want your granddaughter to grow up in a real family home instead of that tiny starter house we've been stuck in? You've had your time here, Frank. Now it's our turn." Before I continue, if you're new here, please like, comment, and subscribe, and tell us where you're watching from. I looked around the kitchen, the same one I'd tiled after working double shifts at the paper mill. Every dent in the counter, every squeak in the floorboard, held a memory. Christmas mornings with David tearing into presents, Sunday dinners when his mother, God rest her soul, used to hum while stirring her famous pot roast. This house wasn't just wood and nails. It was my life, and now, my own son was telling me to hand it over. I tried to keep my voice calm. "David, this house is mine. I paid every mortgage bill, fixed every leak, shoveled every inch of that driveway in February snowstorms. Your mother and I built a life here. Why on earth would I sign it over?" David sighed like he was the one burdened. "Because you're old, Dad. You don't need all this space. Melissa and I can make better use of it. We've got Sophie to think about." Melissa placed her hand on his shoulder, as though she were the noble wife supporting her husband through a tough but necessary conversation. "Think of it as passing the torch," she added smoothly. "Passing the torch." That's how they framed it, as if I were just some placeholder, ready to step aside so they could enjoy the spoils of my labor. I didn't answer right away. I just studied David's face. The boy I'd raised, the boy I'd once carried on my shoulders through the Schenectady County Fair, the boy who used to beg me to take him fishing at Round Lake. Somewhere along the line, that boy had disappeared, replaced by a man who looked at me like I was an obstacle instead of a father. Finally, I said quietly, "I'm not signing anything." The temperature in the room dropped. Melissa's smirk faltered, but David's jaw hardened. "Don't be stubborn, Dad. You always said you wanted to do what's best for family. This is it." I stood up, rinsed my coffee mug in the sink, and turned to face them. "What's best for family, David, is respect. And right now, you're showing me none." Melissa rolled her eyes and muttered under her breath. Typical. I caught it, but I didn't respond. I knew better than to waste words when people had already made up their minds. Instead, I walked out to the porch. The autumn air was crisp, the maples along the street blazing with red and gold. But inside me, everything felt cold. That night, lying awake in the bedroom I once shared with my late wife, I stared at the ceiling and thought about what had just happened. My own son, my flesh and blood, was ready to strip me of the one thing I had left. Not out of need, but out of greed. And in that moment, I knew something deep in my bones. If they thought I was just going to hand over my house, they had another thing coming. Because this story wasn't going to end the way they expected. The following week, Melissa started showing up at my house unannounced. One Tuesday afternoon, I was fixing the loose hinge on the back door when I heard her voice in the kitchen. She had let herself in with David's spare key. "You really should get rid of half this junk, Frank. It makes the place feel dated. Buyers these days want open spaces." I set my tools down and walked in. "Excuse me?" She was standing, there in her designer jacket, sipping one of my sodas like she owned the place. She waved her hand toward the old oak hutch where my late wife's china still sat. "All this clutter, it doesn't add value. I've been looking at listings, and trust me, you'd get more if the house was staged properly. I could even talk to an agent I know." I felt my stomach twist. "Melissa, this is my home, not a listing." She smiled, condescending and sharp. Not for long. Later that night, I confronted David about it. We were sitting in the living room, the glow of the muted TV between us. "Son, I don't appreciate your wife walking into my house like she owns the place. You need to set some boundaries." David rubbed his temples like I was the one causing the headache. "Dad, she's just trying to help. You've been holding on to this place for decades. It's too much for you. You don't mow the lawn like you used to. The roof probably needs replacing. You can't keep up." I stared at him. "I manage just fine." He shook his head. "You're being prideful. Look, Melissa and I already talked with a mortgage broker. If you transfer the deed, we can refinance, fix the roof, remodel the kitchen, and turn this place into something modern. That's what Mom would have wanted." That last part cut deep. He knew exactly how to twist the knife. My late wife, Sharon, had loved this house. She used to plant roses along the fence every spring. She used to say this place would always be our family's anchor. And now, her memory was being used as a bargaining chip. I clenched my fists. "Don't you dare put words in your mother's mouth." David's voice rose. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be, Dad. Just do the right thing." The right thing? That was his phrase. But what he meant was the easy thing. For him, not for me. By the end of the week, I started noticing little shifts. Melissa had accidentally redirected mail to the house. David casually mentioned, in front of Sophie, "This is going to be your home soon." It was like they were trying to erase me while I was still breathing. One Sunday, the three of us sat down for dinner at their place, a forced gesture of family time. Halfway through, Melissa put down her fork and said, "Frank, it's only a matter of time. You can either make this smooth, or you can drag it out and make it ugly. But in the end, the house will be ours." I felt every eye at the table on me. David's, Melissa's, even little Sophie's. And in that moment, I had never felt so small, so outnumbered, so betrayed. But as I chewed that last bite of roast chicken, I made a silent promise to myself. If they wanted a fight, I'd give them one, and I'd make sure they never saw it coming. I didn't sleep much after that dinner. I sat in my recliner with the TV on mute, the blue glow flickering across the walls. My mind was racing, not with anger, not anymore, but with clarity. They had already declared war on me. They just didn't know it yet. The next morning, I drove into town, past the old grain silo and down Main Street where the diner sat. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone. Betty still poured coffee like she had 30 years ago, and the gossip at the counter moved faster than the daily special. I ordered bacon and eggs, then opened up the leather binder I'd pulled from my filing cabinet the night before. Inside were the original mortgage papers, tax receipts, and, most importantly, the deed to the house. In my son's mind, the house was already his, but legally, it was still mine, and only mine, and I intended to keep it that way. Frank, Betty's voice snapped me out of my thoughts as she topped off my coffee. You look like a man with something on your chest. I gave her a tired smile. Just some family troubles. She clucked her tongue. Ain't it always? You just let me know if you need someone to listen. I nodded, but I knew this wasn't something to spread around. Not yet. Small towns had long memories, and I needed to move in silence. Later, that day, I paid a visit to a lawyer in town, Mark Delaney. I'd gone to high school with his father. Mark had that polished look about him, but there was still a small-town decency in his eyes. He shook my hand. Frank, what brings you in? I laid the deed on his desk. I want to make sure this house stays in my name. No funny business. My son and his wife, they're pushing me, trying to make me sign it over. I want to protect myself. Mark adjusted his glasses and flipped through the paperwork. You've got nothing to worry about as long as you don't sign anything. But if you want to be extra cautious, we can put the property in a trust. Make it airtight. I leaned back, the weight lifting a little. Do it! Whatever it costs. As he drew up the papers, I thought of Melissa's smug smile, the way she sipped my soda in my kitchen. She thought she was already standing in her house. But soon, I'd make sure she realized just how wrong she was. When I left Mark's office, the late afternoon sun was spilling gold across the courthouse steps. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady, like a man with both hands back on the wheel. That night, David called. His tone was casual, but I could hear the calculation beneath it. Dad, Melissa found a contractor who can give us a quote on the roof. He could swing by Friday if you want. I smiled to myself, staring at the papers Mark had given me, signed and notarized. Sure, son, I said, keeping my voice calm. Let him come by. We'll see what he thinks. When I hung up, I sat there in the dark, listening to the crickets outside my window. Let them come. Let them keep pushing. Every move they made was another step into the trap they didn't even realize I was building. Friday came, and with it, the contractor. A tall man in muddy boots stomped through my hallway, while Melissa pointed at things with her manicured finger. This wall should be knocked down. That carpet ripped up. And obviously, the roof? Oh, it's a disaster. I followed behind them, silent. The contractor looked uncomfortable, like he'd walked into the middle of a family war. Finally, he turned to me. Sir, you're the homeowner, right? You want me to give you the estimate directly? Before I could speak, Melissa cut in. You can give it to me and my husband. This place will be ours soon anyway. I felt the air go out of the room. Even the contractor looked at her sideways. But I just smiled politely and said, Go ahead and leave it on the counter. When they left, Melissa shot me a look like she had already won, but the truth was, she had no idea what was waiting for her. The real showdown came a week later. David invited me to what he called a family meeting at their house. When I arrived, Melissa was already at the head of the table, papers spread out in front of her. She slid a folder toward me. Frank, these are the transfer documents. If you sign tonight, we can start renovations by spring. I didn't even touch the folder. And if I don't? Her smile was icy. Then we'll have to explore other options. Maybe court. Maybe guardianship. My heart thudded. Guardianship. That word hit me like a hammer. She was threatening to have me declared unfit, just to take the house. David wouldn't even meet my eyes. He sat there, shoulders slumped, letting her speak for him. I leaned forward, my voice steady. You think you've got me cornered. But You don't. You never did. Melissa laughed under her breath. Frank, let's be realistic. You're old. Alone. It's time to let go. That's when I pulled out my own folder. Thick, official, stamped with the county clerk's seal. I slid it across the table to her. Those are the trust papers. The house isn't just mine. It's locked so tight, not even you two could pry it loose with a crowbar. You'll never get it. Her smile faltered. You... what? And another thing, I said, pulling out the contractor's estimate. They had left on my counter. I called him back, told him to do the work, on my terms, with my money. The roof is already scheduled, and the walls stay exactly where they are. Melissa's face flushed red. You went behind our backs. No, I cut her off. You tried to go behind mine. Big difference. For the first time, David finally looked at me, his face pale. Dad, you didn't have to. Yes, I said, my voice rising. I did, because I won't be bullied in my own home. Not by my son, and sure as hell not by his wife. Silence filled the room. The only sound was the hum of their refrigerator. Melissa pushed back from the table, eyes cold as steel. This isn't over. I stood, slipping my folder back under my arm. Oh, it's over. You just don't know it yet. And as I walked out of their house, into the cool night air, I realized something. They thought they were playing chess, moving pieces around me, but I just flipped the board. Melissa didn't. Let it go quietly. Over the next month, she tried everything. Snide comments at church, whispering to neighbors at the grocery store, even calling the county office to inquire about property taxes. Small towns have big mouths, and soon enough, I was hearing that Melissa was telling folks I was too old to handle my affairs. But gossip is a funny thing. It doesn't always stick the way you want it to. One afternoon, I walked into the diner. The usual crowd was there, farmers, retirees, the postman with his coffee to go, and I could feel their eyes on me. Not pity. Respect. Word had gotten around, not about Melissa's story, but the truth. That I had locked down the house and stood up for myself. Betty poured me my coffee and said, Heard you gave your daughter-in-law a lesson she won't forget. Good for you, Frank. I just smiled. Guess some people needed reminding. The final straw came at Sophie's birthday party. Melissa had rented out the church hall, decorated everything with pink balloons and a bouncy castle out back. I showed up with a wrapped box and a card, ready to celebrate my granddaughter. But as I approached the gift table, Melissa stepped in front of me, her smile tight. Frank, you didn't need to bring anything. We're fine without your contributions. That's when Sophie came running up, arms wide. Grandpa! Grandpa! Did you bring me something? I knelt down, handed her the box, and whispered, Of course I did, sweetheart. She tore it open to find a dollhouse, a miniature replica of my house, crafted by a local carpenter. Every shingle, every window, even the roses along the fence. Her eyes lit up. It looks just like your house, Grandpa. Melissa's smile cracked. People started murmuring, leaning in to look. And in that moment, the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The house was still mine. Always would be. David pulled me aside later, his voice low. Dad, Melissa's furious. She says you embarrassed her. I looked him dead in the eye. She embarrassed herself. And if you don't start standing up for what's right instead of hiding behind her, you're going to lose. More than just me. He had no reply. From that day forward, Melissa stopped her little crusade. The whispers died down. The house stayed mine, solid and unshakable. And me? I finally felt peace. I sat on my porch each evening, watching the sun set over the fields, sipping my coffee from Sharon's old mug. The roses bloomed by the fence, just like they always had. They wanted to erase me. Instead, they erased themselves. Because in the end, respect isn't taken by force. It's earned, and they had none to claim. Tell us your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of betrayal, revenge, and poetic justice.